I wanted to tell you a couple stories. So again, I'm Larry Gray. I'm going to tell you two stories. So I had friends tell me when I was preparing this, how should I go about doing this? And everyone was like, tell a story. I was like, but I love telling stories. So this is good. So the first story I'm going to tell you is here is a picture of the island of Tasmania, south of Australia. And I went there for vacation. And my idea of what I wanted to do on this island is I wanted to explore the east coast of this island. And so I landed in Launceston here, Launceston, Tasmania, and I was going to take a bus and travel around the island, stopping at all the coastal towns. So my way from Launceston to St. Helens, which was my first stop, I stayed at a hostel and I ran into this guy, a Nepalese guy named Johnny. So Johnny and I both went around St. Helens and exploring the beach, which is Billabong Bay. This picture here is from Billabong Bay, Tasmania. And we walked that beach and hung out, and we went to the old growth rainforest and hung out. And Johnny and I became very good friends over this short period of time. And we were getting ready to leave, and Johnny, I was getting ready to take a bus, and Johnny was like, hey, brother. And I was like, yes. It's like, we don't take buses around here. We're going to hitchhike. And I was like, no, that's not happening. But after a while, he convinced me. And so we go out to the highway. I put out my thumb, and an old lady in a Bentley pulls up. It's like, do you need a ride? And we were like, oh my gosh, this is happening. Like, this was. So I jump in the car, and she's very nice. She takes us to the next stop. Again, we do this, and someone else, a family picks us up with their kids in the car, and we're like, this is just absolutely amazing. And I realize I'm part of this community in which I'm participating in, and there's a high level of trust and safety in this community, right? In which people are actively participating. There's this sense of belonging, and there's networks that's happening. So this happens all the way to Hobart at the bottom here. We get there, and I fly back to mainland Australia. I'm just so impressed that I want other people to participate in this community. So I call a friend in the States, say, hey, you have to come to Tasmania. You won't believe it. We're going to do this. And she comes, same exact thing. People pull over, pick us up, and we're having a blast. We're enjoying this community, right? And I had this idea. It's like, what if I could transform that type of community into other parts of my life? And so we ended up going the last leg of my trip with my friend. We caught a ride with a college student. And it's like, yeah, you can stay at our place tonight, hang out. And so I get there, and I get into the house, and I hear, hey, brother, it's Johnny. I run into Johnny again on this trip. So this happens. So I never take Johnny's information. This is passing seasons. We'll never see each other again. So I go back to the States. 8 months later, I decide I'm going to come back to Australia. I really enjoy it there. I'm thousands of miles away from Tasmania. I'm out at a cafe, and I hear, hey, brother. Randomly, and it's Johnny, in the middle of the street, random cafe. And it kind of came up, this whole network, this whole thing of just destiny and all this type of things. But the real part about Tasmania was this ideal of community in which people are trusting, are loving, are caring. And so the second story I wanted to tell you about how that applies to my adventure in coming to getting involved in data science. So again, it's 20 ideas to build social capital in the data science ecosystem. So how many of you want to stand out in the ever-competitive data science ecosystem? Just sure you just want to stand out, right? How many people want to get involved and don't really know how, right? That's where I was, right? I got started, my journey was here at this very conference in 2017. I made the decision, my life was at a crossroad. I was a biomedical scientist for 20 years, and I wanted to get into data science, but I didn't know anyone. I didn't know the community. And the only thing I found online was this PyData New York City conference going on. And I thought this would probably be the best place for me to go. And it was transformative, right? I ended up meeting people at this conference that 5 years later would have great impact in my life, right? So today's talk is about building a sustainable, nurturing culture in which we provide a way for others to participate in. So the big thing that I want to say about all of this is that when building social capital, you have to do it from a place of being very honest place, a very humble place, and a place in which you exist in your most authentic self. Like, this is very, very, very important for this to work. And I know that's a hard ask to have, but it's essential. This is the way that all of this works. And why do I even care? It's that I really want to build a diverse, inclusive community within data science, right? I stare at this room, I don't really see anyone that looks like me. Like, I really want that environment where it reflects me, right? And not diverse in many aspects, not just race. So I'm going to introduce you to 3 different people that I met in 2017 that eventually had large impact on my life. Right? I met them not even knowing who they were, really. Someone introduced me to them. It's like, hey, you should talk to this guy, Travis. I don't know if you guys know who Travis is, but he's the reason why we're here today. All right? But I didn't know him at the time. I just knew this guy, Travis, and we had a conversation. But he's the creator of NumPy, SciPy. He's the CEO of Open Teams, helped start NumFocus. But I ran into him. There's another guy named Eric Ma, and if you've been in the PyData circuit, you would see him give a talk. But Eric, he's a scientist at Moderna, and he's also everything Bayesian. If you want to know anything Bayesian, he's the guy to talk to. And he's also a maintainer for a package called PyJanitor. So Eric helped me out quite a bit. And then Katrina, who is sitting in the front row, who I met in 2017, and we really didn't talk much until like 5 years later, and we're in a meeting together. And it's like, I know you. It's like, where do I know you from, right? And it's this 2017 conference. And it was an important meeting, and it was good. So let's talk briefly about social capital. So social capital can be defined as the networks of relationships among people who live and work in a particular ecosystem, enabling that ecosystem to function effectively, right? At a very, very high level of social capital, a good relationship with a lot of people who have access to valuable resources, right? For social capital to attain a high level, you need certain elements. There has to be a sense of belonging. There has to be high levels of safety and trust, reciprocity, participation, citizen power in which the citizens have the power to affect the community in which they live in, a values-led driven diversity and building networks, bridges, and bonds with each other. All these elements need to be in place in order for this to happen. And what I'm going to talk about here is not only at the global layer in which social capital is built to support the entire ecosystem, there's also at an individual level in which social capital exists. And it exists in which resources are embedded in the social network that will bring benefit to the owners. That's at the individual level. All right. So the idea is, first idea, attend a conference. That's the first thing that I did. You all accomplished this. You should be proud of yourself. You attended a conference. But it's not simply just attending a conference. There are other conferences such as PyCon, SciPy, PyData Global, all these conferences that you can participate in, right? So the big thing about doing this is participating in events throughout the conference. So they had open source sprints for here on Tuesday. You can get involved, allows you to meet up with maintainers and contributors and really get involved in the community. You can give a lightning talk. That's coming up this afternoon. Just spend 5 minutes talking about something that you're passionate about. These are things that you can do, and they help you individually. They help you build up confidence in order to do things at lunch. And this is one of the biggest ones. You sit at a table with people you do not know. This is hard for people. but sit out and trade war stories about data. That's one thing that we all have in common is about data. So you can trade war stories, right? And be fully present in talks and ask questions and speak with the speakers. I'm more than happy to speak with each and every one of you. The other part, and the volunteers can attest to this, is one of the best ways to really get out there is to volunteer at conferences. Because whenever I was in graduate school and doing this, or I was a postdoc, I couldn't afford to go to a lot of conferences, so I would volunteer and get free or discounted admission. You get to build relationships with event hosts. Like, this is very important. I'm going to tell you a story, and you get to meet high-profile speakers in a very low-stress environment. So Betsy here is a coordinator, or was a coordinator for PyCon, right? And I've been volunteering. She asked me, do you want to meet Guido van Rossum? I was like, but of course, do you want to have lunch with him? Like, but of course. And I met Guido, and we hit it off. Like, we became friends. Like, I met this guy, and we were later just sending emails back and forth, just chatting. So this was a thing in which I met someone, I became involved, and something fruitful came from it. And if you want to get started in this, every conference website generally has a volunteer section or forum. Just subscribe to conference emails. And if that doesn't work, contact the program committee. You can become involved in this, and this is a great way. So Guido comes up again in later talks because he became important for me in open source software also. So the next thing that I did, so one thing I should mention is that this is happening sequentially, pretty much, in my life. Like, this has happened over a period of time. And one of the things that you can do is give talks at local meetups. This wasn't easy for me at first. What I ended up doing is I would go to the meetings and just get to know people, and then about a year later, I decided to give a talk, right? I gave a talk on sentiment analysis. I remember this very clearly. But it gave me a chance to build up my confidence in speaking at these conferences and getting to know people. And so I'm building out my network during this time. And you can get started, go to meetup.com, search for data science, any of these key terms. And it's tempting to join them all, but don't do that. Don't join them all. Kind of get to know a few of them, right? This one is quite interesting. I joined a study group, and it was a group of people getting together that would study a very specific machine learning topic, and we would dive deep into it. And then afterwards, we would write blog posts about what we learned and doing this. It was a great exercise to be in a room full of people that were doing this together. And it was a great networking opportunity. So I really suggest that you seek out these type of opportunities because they can be really rich opportunities for you to grow. And the way that you make this happen basically is to access your local network. If you don't have a local network, you can go to Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups, and find people that are interested in these types of things. So there are three people that I wanted to kind of talk about here. So Martin, who was in the study group with me, Benjamin Bankford, Dr. Benjamin Bankford, and Dr. Rebecca Bilbrough, who I met there that become very important in my life as I went on to do open source software and some other aspects. So this is what I'm really passionate about. It's open source software. And I'm a maintainer for Yellowbrick. Yellowbrick is a machine learning, like visual diagnostics performance. I ran into several people that know this package, which is kind of cool. But it was really great because as a data scientist, one of the skills that sometimes we lack is our software development skills, right? And this was the opportunity to build those skills and to learn to build a maintainable project, right? So, and it's also the opportunity to be part of the data science and open source software communities. It's simple. Go submit a pull request, go to GitHub for the most part for your favorite project. Submit a pull request. It could be a typo. It could be documentation. It could be a feature, but it's an opportunity for you to get involved. And if you're looking for packages to work on, well, NumFocus has plenty that you can contribute to. There's non-focus supported or physical supported projects, and there's affiliated projects, which Yellowbrick is an affiliated project, and there's like Pandas, Matplotlib. You can contribute to all of these, and they're very open and welcoming of contributors. So this is fun. If you go to my LinkedIn page, you see me with a thumbs up on a picture because I won a hackathon. That was like really fun. It was a great way to test your skills out in the wild and be creative. So this is something you can do in order to kind of get around and understand your local community. And so to get started, you will search for local events, search for online events. There's DevPost, there's Hacker Earth, there's Kaggle. These are all places where you can get involved, right? And so one of the things that you notice here, these are all, it seems like personal things that you can just do to kind of build up your own self and build up your resources. But we're going to switch gears to actually talking about how do you actually build up the social capital for the entire ecosystem, right? So one of the things that I love doing is joining committees where you can directly support, in this case, the data science and open source software. You can join this and be on these committees, be a part of the community. And how do you get started? Like for me, there you go to websites of like NumFocus or PyCon. I'm on a poster committee. I was on a small development grants committee for NumFocus and the affiliated project selection committee, which I'm the chair of right now. But this is a great way for you to actually participate in the community in which when you're doing this, you're kind of making the glue a little stickier for social capital. Like social capital is the glue that kind of keeps things going and working. And so by participating, you're helping to build that community. One of the things, this is interesting. So I ended up becoming adjunct faculty at Georgetown University because of Dr. Benjamin Bankford, who I showed before, convinced me that this would be great. And you might think, okay, forget it, Larry, you have a PhD, that's why you can become adjunct faculty. I actually didn't have my first I was teaching data science before I had my first data science job. Like, it really came down to skill, right? More than actual me having a degree. And at this point, I had taught myself for maybe 3 years of doing data science, right? So it's not impossible. So one of the great things from doing this is that you can improve your understanding of data science fundamentals, and you can introduce, this is the community part. And most people don't, this is a way for you to introduce students into the data science ecosystem. Like really important to getting new people that are joining involved, and you can shape the way that they involve. Like the things that we end up doing, we only use open source software in teaching, right? Get them involved in the open source community also. And the side, you generate income, right? So the way that you get started with this is through people already doing this. So if you, this is very real, if you want to teach data science or data analytics, come talk to me, all right? That's not an empty gesture, come talk to me. So you can also reach out to universities. A lot of universities now have data-related certificates, and they need professionals in order to teach those certificates. So develop coursework. This is like a side, this comes from teaching. Again, it improves your understanding of data science fundamentals, and you can generate passive income. You get started by working with a university. And so I ended up developing coursework at Georgetown because of Dr. Bangford, who I mentioned earlier, nominated me to actually design some courses. But I'm constantly bombarded by Coursera, Udemy, CoRise, and Educative. There's opportunities to go out there and create courseware where people will help and guide you and make sure that you create content that's good content. So you have that opportunity also. So don't think that you cannot do it. So I'm really happy about this because I think I discovered something that most people don't know. I moved to Salt Lake City, Utah from Baltimore, Maryland. Culture shock, right? And I knew no one, right? And it's during the pandemic, and I really need to reach out to people, right? And so what I ended up doing, I was like, okay, I'm gonna get on LinkedIn, I'm gonna find all the data scientists that I can find, and I'm gonna reach out to them. And so I just send them very honest messages. Hey, I'm new to the area. Would you like to chat sometime? Let me know what you're doing. I can tell you what I'm doing. 99% of the time, people are like, yes, sure, but of course. And so I even took it a step further. I was like, hey, what if I talk to people that are in positions above me, that the positions that I want to get to, right? What if I reach out to those people and say, honestly, hey, I really want to know how you got to where you're at in your career, right? 99% of the time, people were very responsive and would call and talk to me. Even getting job offers from a few people just from content. And it was a great way to build out my network. And this was like the stepping stone for me to actually get involved more with my local community, because I had a vast network of just local data scientists that I built up from just talking to. And so this comes back to building my local network in Salt Lake City, to trying to organize a meetup. So it's pandemic, the local PyData meetup is defunct, no one's having it. And I thought, well, maybe we can do virtual, all right? We'll do a virtual conference. And I go look up who's organizing this conference. And lo and behold, it's Travis Oliphant. He's the organizer for this. And I was like, I know Travis. So I sent him an email and say, hey, I really want to, he's not even living in Salt Lake anymore, but he's still organizing this meetup. And so I said, hey, I really want to be a co-organizer to get this going. And it worked. I was able to help build local community, establish relationships with local influencers. And I got started by leveraging my local meetup. So I started reaching out to people saying, we're going to have this meetup and we're going to start a speaker series, right? And we went that. And so Travis also started helping me whenever I was on a job search also. So he was out there campaigning for me to get positions and things like that, which was great. So he had a dramatic impact on my life. So sitting on panels, this is kind of a weird one. You can get to better understand your opinions. This is pretty cool because you get to better understand your opinions on certain topics, and learn to express those opinions clearly to a receptive audience, right? It's a big benefit. I don't know if people realize that being on the side of the table is a big benefit for you also, to better understand how you feel about things. And this is generally the outgrowth of participating in community, right? Conferences, LinkedIn, local, and things like this. So during the pandemic, there were not a lot of social events. There were practically none. And I had to figure out a way, how do I create social capital or build a community within my own organization that can help me and help the outside community. So I went to doing something called, I went to increase social capital at work. And so what I ended up doing is build a data literacy program so people understand the importance of data within my organization. I started doing things as teaching Python or data science courses to the staff. And the surprising effect, whenever we got out of the pandemic and I wanted to host events, they were like, yeah, this data thing is pretty cool, right? And so I was building capital within my organization that made them more susceptible to my suggestions to help the community as a whole. And so we're here today. So submit a conference talk. So to submit a conference talk, what I end up doing is, this wasn't the first time I submitted a conference talk, and the first one did not go very well. It didn't get accepted. But the benefit of this, and I've learned, is that you get to share your passion. I'm really passionate about building social capital and meeting new people. The thing is, you need to select the appropriate conference for your talk, right? That's key to this. And review previous proposals. So PyCon and PyData are really good about this, providing that information. So start a data science internship. This gets back into how do we give back to the community. What you're trying to do here in these cases are foster growth of others. Like this is about them being a part of the community. So you're doing things, and this is very unique because you're giving hands-on like experiences to people whenever you're doing this. And you do this through Google Summer of Code or through your job. So Eric Ma helped me out a lot with this. So I wanted to start writing blog articles. And what I ended up doing is writing articles and sending them to Eric, and he would proofread everything for me. And it was like, we'll go through the cycle, and he would be so welcoming, so nice. It's like, go through this. And I just start publishing constantly to the point that I was actually had a huge following behind me just writing blog posts. But he helped me considerably and do that. But there's benefit for this is, A, you better understand certain topics that you're writing about. You're able to give your unique perspective, and I think this is very important that there should be a lot of unique perspectives that are coming out, and you make an impact on the body of data science literature, right? And get started, open up a medium.com account, and you can just find others doing this. So reviewing books, this is interesting. I was able to do this through other just knowing people that were actually writing books and reviewing them. But there's opportunities for you to go to O'Reilly, Packet, Manning.com, and actually explore those opportunities yourself. So this isn't far-fetched in order to do this. This is different from providing mentorship is different from internship. This is where you're simply listening, giving advice, and providing access to your network. Like this is very important, and anyone at any stage can do this, right? You can always be a mentor to someone else, right? And you just need to make yourself available to others. And I know that's a hard ask at times to make yourself available, but it's important. This might seem out of place, be proactive. Like I've talked about everything here, but it's actually key to all of this is just being proactive to help maintain and grow the data science community. And you do it in a way where it's values driven and you create your own circumstances. That's what I end up doing with all of this, is creating my own circumstances, and you should be proactive. This is important because you want to give others the opportunity to grow. This comes from the mentoring and everything. You want to give people opportunity to grow and show gratitude. So how you get started with this is just share knowledge, experience, and your time, right? And finally, community leadership positions. So the benefits of this is having a broad impact on community, right? And so I was nominated to be on the board of directors of NumFocus. And I mentioned my Katrina, me and her seeing each other for the first time in 5 years in that meeting. It was like, oh, I know you. And I'm thinking like, man, 5 years ago, I was nowhere close to any of this stuff, right? And slowly I've made my way up through the community. And now that I'm like overseeing certain aspects of it, like my ability to want or my desire to actually give back and help this community be more like Tasmania, where we just walk around and people are like, hey, how can I help you? Hi, hey, what do you need? Come stay here. This is great. I would love to live in that environment in which, in that environment. So opportunities I would like to explore, I would like to write a book on social capital, right? Host a regional conference, have you guys come out to Salt Lake City, experience what's out there, host a podcast, and get a new job, which is interesting because I got a new job before. So Martin, who I introduced before from the study group, just out of the blue messaged me and said, hey, you know, I want you to introduce you to this guy. I think you'd be a good fit. So we hit it off, and I was like, I really like this company. And I go to a project summit for NumFocus, and I'm talking to Katrina. And I was like, hey, I'm getting this job at this company called Kung Fu AI. And she was like, Larry, I got the confirmation that I need. It's like, that's the company you need to work for. Like, those are the guys right there. So it was like, again, Katrina coming around, I'm getting a job, and she was like, yes, that's the job for you, right? And so it was great. So these opportunities, and it all, if you notice, it all benefits from the network and from the community itself. You're able to deal with all the resources and access to resources within this community. And then again, bring honesty, humility, and your authentic self to every interaction. And this is the only way that this succeeds. That's all I have to say. Any questions? Yes.
On your 13th point, and thank you so much, that's excellent talk. When you're talking about a data literacy program, DS Playbook, DS Roadmap, can you go a little bit more into what those are?
Yeah, so what I ended up doing is comprising using a company called Qlik, Qlik. They have free data literacy programs in which I was able to construct from their materials and finagle them into a way that I could use it at my work in a free. So that was the data literacy, and I had a mandate from my CEO that everyone in the organization, if we were going to be data driven, everyone needs to take this 40-minute exercise, right? And not 40 minutes, I mean 4 hours. It was actually a big commitment. It was 4 hours of learning for data literacy. The data science playbook was a way, whenever I came in, there was no uniform way to do data science in the organization. And so that was me creating an 80-page document about how we were going to do data science and kind of making sure that how we interacted with different departments. We make sure that everyone is actually taking advantage of the data science data science capabilities that we had in our organization. So, and just kind of laying it out how that worked. So being very inclusive with everyone that marketing really wasn't involved in data science before, sales was not involved in the data science aspect, and going out to them and saying, this is our playbook that we should meet quarterly with the different departments to understand their needs. And so it was a really big layout of what was happening within the organization, how it should function. Did that cover?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
Regarding your point about adjunct faculty positions, for those of us who may have been coming from other fields and have been learning on the job data science, but are interested in these types of teaching positions so that we can reinforce our own skills, how would you go about either, one, demonstrating to a university or other teaching program that you have the requisite skills to teach, or to prove to yourself that you are ready for that type of commitment and position?
So one of the things is actual involvement within the community. That's a good way to demonstrate, especially with open source software, showing that you can actually, I work on a machine learning package, right, that directly involved in understanding how models work. Right? I can demonstrate that successfully. And just whoever you're working with, figure there's different. I'm trying to think of the different ways that you can demonstrate it, but that interview is really what the important thing is. Just during the interview, asking simple questions about the course, what's being taught. My course is Pandas is a really big deal. What is your current understanding of Pandas? Do you do it proficiently? How do you handle a classroom? These types of things are what's important. But it took me my friend over a year to convince me that I was ready in order to do it. I really felt like I was not prepared to go teach someone. It's you know this stuff a lot better than you think you do. So I would encourage you to even try, right? And don't worry about the fear of rejection. Take it as an opportunity to understand what people are requesting and just put yourself out there, right? You can always go back. So I know if you came to me and you were not ready, it's you're just not ready to teach this class, that wouldn't prevent you from coming to me in the future and saying, I want to participate again, try again. So that's. Any more questions? Okay. I think that's it. So you can come up and speak to me if you like.